Hi everybody, welcome to this webinar. My name is Andrew Larkin. I'm from the Cloud Academy team, and I'm going to take you through some aspects of the professional certification for AWS today. I'm going to try and keep it pretty informal. I'm assuming that you're here because you'd like to try and pass the professional certification, and I'd like to share with you some of the experiences that I've been through myself as a certified solution architect and in preparing the latest learning path which we've put together to help you get to that level of certification. I think one of the first questions that always comes to mind when we're talking about certs is, should I bother? And you hear a lot about how difficult the exam can be, etc. And I guess the first question we need to ask ourselves is, why would I do this? I think there's a lot of personal development that comes with this professional tier. The associate tier really helps you build your knowledge of the platform. It's one of those, I suppose, milestones that you pass as an architect to say that you're able to build things competently in AWS, and being certified by AWS as at that level, I think is very, very, very well regarded. Now the professional tier is another level again, and that I think the professional tier really shows that you are competent in building and managing AWS-based solutions. And there's a lot of value in that. And I think that taking this next step is going to really add a lot of value to you as a IT professional. So let's have a think about what we will actually need to do then. So if we're going to take this leap of faith and go up from associate to professional, to some of the common myths, and I'll tell you, I hear a lot of these. So I thought we might just start by debunking and dealing with a few. And so the first one is that it's too hard to pass. And yeah, it's a really tough exam. There is no hiding that. It is one of the toughest ones I think I've sat in my life. I've been in the IT industry for 30 plus years, and I've been in the internet industry for just coming up to 20. And I think this was one of the hardest ones that I actually navigated. It certainly wasn't an easy one, and there's no easy way about it. But that said, if you do prepare properly and you take the time to actually learn the base information as well as your hands-on experience, you will find the questions not as challenging. So it's designed to test your ability to design and deploy AWS solutions. So you need to be competent in that. Now the other myth I think which pops up a lot is that the scenarios are really tricky. Yeah, they are. You've got around 80 questions, and you're working to a 3-hour time frame. You want to leave some time at the end to check your answers, etc., which really leaves you with around 2 minutes per question. And the scenarios are very elaborate. So they're designed to test your ability to identify requirements, evaluate potential services, and then to choose the service that's the best match for those requirements in this context of the question. So there are some skills that we can build on how to actually approach these type of questions, and going through the learning path that I built recently, that was one of the key things I wanted people to come away with, was the sense that they were able to approach these questions, to be able to evaluate quickly and to get through them. So a lot of the content that we've put together for the Solution Architect Professional Learning Path it starts off with a scenario or a sample question. So yes, they are tricky, but you can get better at answering them. And the more your subject matter expertise is there to help you rather than hinder you, the quicker you can process the information you need to and to start to evaluate the options. That, I think, is the difference between someone who walks in unprepared, who will find these scenarios incredibly difficult, over someone who's prepared and who can read and evaluate quickly and is ready to start to think through what is the best AWS way of doing this. And walking straight in from the field, that always helps. We deal with real-life scenarios every day in our day jobs, and these questions are sometimes related to that type of evaluation and I suppose on-the-spot thinking, and some of them are quite self-contained. That they're not I suppose in context real-world scenarios, but I think all of them have a real-world scenario component. that is something that, by doing these questions, you'll get better at actually answering questions on the spot in a room with a customer, and to be able to evaluate quickly and to bring the value of AWS to the end customer. So yes, they can feel a little tricky, but going through the questions and the sample questions and the scenarios will really help you. So let's think about some other ones we've got. It's nothing like the associate exam is another myth. Let's bust that one. Yeah, it is exactly the same as the associate exam in that it's an exam. It's longer, it's harder. It requires a lot more preparation, but back yourself. You've already passed the associate one, and I'm sure you found that quite challenging too at first when you first thought about sitting it and testing out the sample questions, but you passed it. So you can do the same with the professional one. You need to give yourself time to really take in the information you need to and to practice. It's not something that you can just walk into and expect to pass, okay? But it's still the same format, and at the end of the day, if you know the stuff, you will pass, all right? Okay, another common myth I get is you're asked questions on irrelevant details in the exam, so why bother? Really would disagree with that one, because I think one of the best things, or one of the things I enjoyed most about my journey through the Solution Architect Professional Certification was that it really helped you learn more of the edge cases. And while we're all good at responding to, say, 80% of those scenarios that feel very common, the lift and shifts, the simple startup type environments, there's nothing better than having exposure to some of the more edgy use cases and to really start to delve into how customers in the real world have dealt with the challenges that you will get as the industry and the ecosystem matures. So I think the actual edge cases on a lot of the services, simple queue service, so yeah, just being able to delve into the detail on things like simple queue service, really understanding Elastic Block Store and how to optimize it for certain scenarios. These are all things that you in your day jobs may come across, but you will come across in future. So the exam format really delves you into some of those detail aspects, which I found really interesting, and I think you will too. So by all means, see it as a challenge, but don't see it as a threat. Being an expert in the services and how to use them is a good thing. Right, so have we got any others? Let's have a look here. Yeah, the last one I think is, if you use the console every day, you should be fine. And those of us that do use the console every day, it does help for sure. But there's a lot of background reading that you also need to make time for. That's the white papers, the FAQs, and I really recommend going through as many of the reInvent presentations from the 2013, 2014 reInvent sessions, because these are real-world scenarios with customers talking about real-world events. And you've got to also spare a thought for the poor examiners who are coming up with a format that they can support in a worldwide environment. So it's almost a race to the bottom to try and keep the content up to date with every new release. So you're not going to get questions about the very latest features and formats of various things. You're going to get more generic questions that are about how to use AWS rather than the specifics of a specific service. I think that's something to, if it helps you not fret so much. Using the latest and greatest services is always good, but you're going to have more high-level scenarios that are about choosing the right technology, and it may come down to specific details, but it may also be more about the actual theory behind why you did it. This is the solution architect track, not the DevOps track, remember? So some of the DevOps questions can be a little bit more specific on services, but I think that if you have hands-on experience with the console, please don't think that's going to help you that much. All right, you still need to do the background reading, and it's well worth spending an afternoon or a day and just getting 3 or 4 of the white papers and just going through them, and you will have a aha moment that you'll think, wow, I didn't know that beforehand. Especially some of the edge cases around BGP, VPN connections, even just how to really understand when and how to use EBS, S3, and all of the great database services that AWS provides. A lot of that thinking will become second nature to you when you go back over some of this content. And it's most likely you haven't had time to do that because you're busy in your day jobs. And, who's got time really to sit down and read white papers, right? All of us are too busy solving problems for customers. But it is rewarding if you do spend some time doing that. The FAQs as well, I think, are a must-do. And it's well worth having a structured learning path, because you'll find it overwhelming trying to pick off everything and trying to manage your own time basically when you're already managing your day jobs and your families or whatever. So it is well worth just preparing for spending time. So the journey I've been through recently is I've put together the learning path, which I really, really enjoyed. And as an architect, I really enjoyed it. And I think it's going to help you actually frame your content. So as a Cloud Academy subscriber, if you're not a subscriber already, then do the trial, check it out. This framework will really help you build the knowledge you need. So I'm just going to walk you through how I went about this, just to help you prepare. If ideally, I think you should do the learning path. It's all there for you. If you do want to do this yourself, then hopefully this will give you some tips. So the key thing is the 8 domains, right? So I built my learning path around the 8 domains in the exam guide. That is the one source of truth we have with those people that wish to test us, okay? So they give us a really good outline of what to expect in the exam. They give us some good background on what we should have as experience, and some of you will meet that, some of you won't. Don't let that put you off. This is forward-looking, okay? So, but the domains themselves are very important. So there's a lot there, and that's the one difference I think between the solution architect associate and the professional is that now you're dealing with a lot of content. And I must admit, when I first approached this as how do I prepare content that will get students to a point where they're ready to sit this exam, it was daunting, it was overwhelming. So I just worked on the 8 domains and built out from that. So the first thing I did was just put together a course primer, which really just I suppose immerses you in the AWS exam mode. Now, we're all out there doing our things, so you're going to have perhaps a little bit of time between when you set the associate exam and when you go and sit the professional. So I wanted to have a quick way of bringing you up to speed on those core issues, just to quickly rephrase the terminology and perhaps refresh you on some of those services that you haven't used for a while. So that's a kind of course primer. If you've already started your study and preparation, you probably don't need to do that. It's one of those ones you can opt out of if you don't think it's going to add value, but it's a very good quick snapshot back into the real world, certainly on scalability, real world of AWS exams, scalability and elasticity, high availability, which are 2 key components of the exam criteria, and security. So after that, just to give you a picture, so really going back through the high availability top 10, if you remember that from the Solution Architect Associate Learning Path, those 10 features that can really help us build highly available, scalable applications. Just high-leveling through the purchasing options again, just to get us refreshed. Things like auto-scaling, just stepping through the various logic steps so that you get those back into your field of attention. So the first domain, I will show you as much as I can on the screen here. I've put it onto slides just in case it doesn't work, which is so common, isn't it, with these sort of things. But the learning path itself has each domain built around the learning objectives in the exam guide. And we've put together both these lectures plus some really, really good labs. These labs are fantastic. They do give you that hands-on exposure that if you don't have much AWS exposure during your day job, then these are great because you can trial anything you like and stand it up, and especially things like CloudFormation, where I think unless you actually make time to sit down and say, right, I'm going to delve deep into CloudFormation, above and beyond the tasks I do currently spinning up our environments, managing our 3 stacks, I need to go deeper and I want to be an expert in CloudFormation. These labs are, 60 minutes, they'll help you understand CloudFormation in ways that you wouldn't in your, your day jobs. So the quizzes as well are just a quick way to step you through, not the actual questions or topics we've been over in the domains, just to generally build your knowledge. And they're very good because if you get anything right or wrong, then you can click through and read and explain. So running them in study mode is a fantastic way of just building your subject matter expertise. So really, really good steps in the learning path just to keep you thinking about the grey areas you might have. And we work very hard to find all of the edge cases that we think you might be tested on. And the whole exam curriculum is built around getting you across that line, and also to make you a better solution architect. So all of these things we've done with that key priority of getting you to pass the exam. But ultimately, we'd like to see you become a better architect, and hopefully this learning path will help you build that. So each of these have some steps of their own, which I'll get into in a sec. All right, so the first, high availability, domain and business continuity. We start with scenarios and sample questions because I think that's the best way to learn. It's like, confront yourself with the type of question you're going to get, and we go through each of the options, practice how to pick out the bits that are relevant to the exam. So I think that's one of the key things that people get wrong is that, they spend a lot of time reading but perhaps don't pick out the key criteria or requirements that are given to you in the description. So we spend time practicing that, and also to remove some of the options that aren't options, that are really, I suppose, distractions. And the quicker you can get through that, the quicker you can get down to a comparable set of options that you can then evaluate as being the best fit for the requirements you've been given. Now, that's the sort of starting point, and we build into each of these domains. RTO and RPO, of course, are crucial. We go through some fantastic content around how to actually design for how to decouple your applications, how to evaluate your business requirements, and how to do a cost analysis. That's led by Andrew Templeton, which I love that content. I think you'll find it very, very useful. It's very good to get contextual on high availability and business continuity at this level. So the level we're at with associate, we need to understand the core concepts, but for the professional certification, we need to be able to go deep into the topics and actually generally understand how to build these things for high availability and business continuity. So as well as the designing lectures, we're going to some good backup and recovery scenarios, because a key component of RPO and RTO is what your backup and restore strategy is. So if you've got an RPO of 90 minutes and you're backing up every 2 hours, then that's going to impact what your recovery point or recovery time strategy is going to be. So just the sort of thinking outside of the box of what these words are to actually how you do these things. I think you'll find that very rewarding, and I think that's a core topic to get into if you are planning on doing this yourself. Then make sure you understand how to design decoupled, loosely coupled apps, how to think through a business feasibility and cost benefit analysis, and then at implementation, how to actually stand up a scenario or solution to meet your RPO and RTO requirements. I think scalability and elasticity are so tied together that they're chronologically, high availability is listed as domain 1, but scalability and elasticity is listed as domain 7. And as we're following the exam guide, unfortunately, we don't get to scalability and elasticity until the 7th group. But I've tried to link them together as best we can, so we actually stand up an environment from end to end, and we look at decoupling our database layers, we look at porting to a new region and thinking through what kind of design considerations we'll have in implementing that. So the first high availability business continuity is a mix or blend of both theory, practice, and hands-on, and then the scalability and elasticity domain is pretty hands-on and just designing a solution and standing it up. So the other key things are just, I would estimate there's around 30% of content on these two topics alone, and it's well worth having your base understanding of these. It's not something that you should gloss over. I think it's well worth going back into the AWS world of exam preparation for the professional certification, as you did with the associate, but you're going to need to immerse yourself in the pure thinking of how do I build scalable, elastic, highly available apps that are going to remain, or continue through any kind of outage. Key issue. All right, so costing. Now, costing is given a small slice of the examiner's time. It's only, I think, clocked in at around 8%. Let's have a quick look. See if we get our stats right here. It was 8%. Let's have a look. Sneak in here. Oh, blocked it. Yeah, around 8%, I think. Let's have a look. Costing 6%. So it's given a small slice on this guide, but my personal experience, I thought that there was a major part, and I think as cost and cost optimization are such key components of designing well, you really need to have a good understanding of these. And what I went through in the learning path was understanding how to optimize instances. So actually going into what that means at the instance level. So if we have M1 X large is running at 100% CPU utilization, what options could we consider to reduce our cost or get a better compute result? And just working through the calculator and actually trying to get a little below the surface so that you have a really good understanding of how you go about this in day-to-day scenarios. Also things like consolidated billing, and it did seem like there's quite a few questions on these topics. Creating cross-account roles is another area that is important in what you can do and what's actually part of consolidated billing and what's not. And so we deal with these in a number of scenarios. And yeah, just really stepping through that approach to how do I optimize for best cost. That's a key tenet of being a good AWS solution architect, is being able to design for the best result for your end customer. So a lot of that comes down to how can I get the best value out of these services to net the best result for my end customer. So that's a key focus in my view. And just being able to delve into what a real scenario looks like if we're doing upfront purchasing, if we are looking at using RIs or spot instances, what that could equate, and how we can quickly calculate these in our head so that if we do get a scenario that's asking us what is the best or most cost-efficient way of delivering this, while we don't need to know the actual details of how much it is, it's not like you have to memorize the simple monthly calculator or anything like that. It's just being able to quickly mentally compute what would be the most likely way of getting a cost-efficient solution. Yeah. Another design, security, which is a key one. And always, security is a key tenet of AWS design. We go through the topics and delve into detail on IAM management, making sure we fully understand data at rest controls. A lot of this does have, a foot in each camp, basically. There's the sort of designing ISMS systems view, where we need to be clear on how we would do that, all of the OSI considerations we might have. And then there's a bottom-up view of what would we do to implement secure, environments. What do we need to do to protect our data at rest? What do we do to protect data in flight? And the questions in this domain are tricky. They're going to make you think, and you'll have a number of options about how you could, reduce your exposure or reduce your surface area. And I think one of the key challenges with the Solution Architect Professional exam format is that there are a number of options that could be right. It's not just that there's one and all the others aren't. You really do get left with 2 or 3 that could be right and may fit. And so you really have to think it through and come up with a choice which you believe is the best one for the scenario that you've been given. And that just comes with practice. So we delve into a lot of those key areas, just making sure that you're really up with Web Identity Federation, how we would work with both, sort of Cognito type scenarios, how we would use SAML if we're looking at authenticating corporate users, etc. And a lot of those things can be quite confusing if you're not doing it every day. So it's well worth spending time on this domain to ensure that you fully understand a lot of these concepts, and just really what are the mitigation strategies and how you go about hardening environments so that you can reduce attack opportunities. And we do that with a number of scenarios, which I think you'll find quite interesting if you do it. Data storage, again, we went through this in some detail with the associate track, and I'm sure you're all competent with being able to determine or explain what the differences are between EBS, S3 and RDS, right? But what we want for the professional tier is to really thinking about the trade-off decisions. And there's a lot of granularity in this. So, thinking about when to use EBS optimized instances, what type of throughput we can expect from our EBS volumes, and how that can impact our design decisions. So rather than just should it be S3 or EBS, it should be EBS but what sort, and at what size, and at what throughput. So having a good understanding of how IOPS work, what the kind of throughput you can expect is, and what the optimization options are, is crucial to being able to make those decisions quickly. And with RDS, there's a lot of product in there. A lot of the RDS expertise at a design level really needs to be around your backup and recovery strategies, your multi-AZ design strategies, having a good understanding of what the benefits are. And the benefits are, the automatic backups. The benefits are quite a long list. So, you have to be quite clear on those, and also thinking through, well, if I'm asked, should I use RDS or should I use another service or do it a different way, you can quickly evaluate whether or not RDS is going to be the best solution for the requirements you've been given. And those are not easy. So there again, it's practice. Practice makes perfect. And the more exposure you have to real-world scenarios, the more likely you are to be able to answer successfully on the day. So the next, we've already talked through that. So just understanding your IOPS, what your throughput is, the various types of storage, what the benefits are of each. Again, you're not expected to know the actual intricate details of each current EBS offering, but you are expected to understand what the value and benefits of each type are, and to know when to choose one over the other. Now, network design is another key component, obviously, and we need to be fully compliant with the VPC. So if you haven't worked in the VPC recently, when I say worked in the VPC, I don't mean just standing up one or two environments. I mean actually building things from end to end, all of your subnetting, understanding all of the constraints you have around what you can and can't do in your subnet, what you can and can't do in your VPC. Things like how many IP addresses are reserved by AWS. There's 4. So that's going to impact your subnet. So those numbers you need to calculate, that will factor those in if you're calculating how many IP addresses will be available in your CIDR block. Little things like that you'll do in your head mentally if you're dealing with it a lot, but if you're not, then you need to refresh and get familiar with those. 4 IP addresses. Some of the VPC pairing and assume role functionality, we go through that. It's an important topic. How a VPC pairing scenario might play out, what you can and can't do, how you actually set it up. Things like Cloud Hub, which you may not be familiar with, you need to know those. Direct Connect, and I think really importantly, what and how is the border gateway protocol, and how would you set up your routing inside that? Key areas for discussion and learning. Now, planning and deployment, this is the realm of DevOps, I suppose. As architects, we're expected to understand as much as we can about deployment management, especially in planning. So we step through a planning deployment scenario to help you with that, choosing the right technology, making sure that you match the use case with the technology, not overdoing it too much or too little, ensuring it's decoupled, and walking through some of the deployment services that we have available to us in AWS. Now, the other key thing about deployment is really understanding things like, what is immutable infrastructure? What are rolling and canary deployments? What's a blue-green deployment? And these are things that you might not have had the opportunity to read up about yet, and you'll find them really interesting. There's some 4 great ways of approaching a deployment situation, and these are great areas for you to learn. Andrew runs through some really good content in this. Excuse me. So I think you'll find that well worth doing. And just in rounding out on cloud migration and hybrid architectures, again, I've stuck to scenarios on this because ultimately I want you to come out of this learning path ready to evaluate a question, to choose the best options, and then to work with a refined option set and choose the one that best suits the scenario. So we start with a scenario, most of these domains, we pull it apart, we talk through what the various options are, we talk about what we could or can't do, we do some whiteboarding, and do the kind of routine that you do as an architect in evaluating the best way of going about it in a slow motion way. So in your head, hopefully you'll be able to do this quickly. So we do it in a slow way just so that you can start to think through those patterns that you can go through, and questioning every possible single point of failure, questioning every possible way of decoupling this more, and always coming back to what is it that the customer has actually asked for, and are we sure, absolutely sure, that we're meeting that requirement? So we do a lot of that in the cloud migration and hybrid architectures. Yeah, so there's plenty of content to learn. This is just a quick snapshot of the reading list I've got for the learning path. There's plenty there, and hopefully by doing a structured learning path like this one will help you keep your attention focused. In terms of time, how much time should you actually budget for putting into studying for this? I think give yourself a minimum of 4 weeks. 4 weeks to actually take the journey, and you'll discover areas that you need to work on as you go. And things like quizzes are a really fantastic way of highlighting areas that you need to work on. And that's been very, very conservative, 4 weeks. I mean, personally, I think it's going to take you 8. But if you start with 4 weeks and see how you go, use the sample exam as a good way of just level setting where you are. It's well worth spending the $20 odd or whatever it is to sit it. A, because it will give you a sense of what the exam format will be, and B, you can test out how you're going, and it'll help you identify areas that you need to work on. Ditto the quiz questions that we've got on the site. So these are fantastic because they really do help you just query your knowledge, and they do edge case a lot. So the edge cases of auto-scaling, the edge cases of EBS. You don't have to try and pass each of the quizzes. I recommend doing them in study mode, so that with study mode you get a chance to just test, you'll have a go at the question, but click through and read the explains, so that you're building your knowledge every time you do that. It's very useful. Okay, so I've left a bit of time here at the end. I'd love to hear your questions, and if we can help you further. Let me just have a look down here. Let's have a look. Got plenty here. Oh yeah, number of IP addresses, yeah, it's 4. Yeah, if you count 0. Questions, network address and broadcast address. Can I make the thing public? Yep. Yeah, so there's a good question here about features coming out, and I mean, look how many features AWS release each year. You know, it's a fantastic, fantastic cadence for us in the field and for customers to have so many new features coming out. For us, passing certifications, it's important that you're across each of the new features, and hopefully your curiosity will keep you up to date. And Jeff Barr's blog is a fantastic way of seeing what's new and learning more about the ecosystem. And I'm sure you're keeping up with the latest announcements and things like reInvent and the roadshows and summits that are done in the regions. So use those by all means, but remember the questions in the exam are not going to be up to the last minute, because that would be so difficult to do for any examiner. They are there to try and make a middle ground to test your understanding of AWS. So don't worry too much about the actual current releases of EBS volumes, you know, the regions, what services are available in regions and which aren't. Of course, that's changing daily. So you're better off just thinking about why you might consider using one region over another. If you're looking at a multi-region, why you might consider using one EBS type SSD over magnetic, why you might use DBS optimized, and if so, what is your evaluation for that? Is there a cost consideration? Not the actual number, but if we did have to, you know, design it, would it cost more if we did it that way? Those are the types of thinking frameworks rather than what is the current cost of an EBS volume. Okay, let's have a look here. Will this webinar be available later? Yeah, we're recording it, so we'll post it on the webinar part of our site. So by all means, I think your best point of reference is to have a look at the Solution Architect Professional Learning Path on the website. So if you haven't got a subscription already, then take the trial, and that will, you know, you'll have the opportunity to run through the lectures. There's 22 hours of content in there. It's a beast. I'm, you know, sitting here thinking, wow, it's been quite immersive, us pulling all this content together. It's been a lot of fun. We've really enjoyed building this content for you. But there's a lot to get through, and there's over 7 hours of really detailed lectures, which you're going to love. You know, and the only way I think you can really start to prepare is by doing. So the sooner you get into this, the better. The high-level points I put in these slides are just sort of snapshots of what we got in there. Each of the domains, as you can see there, is we've followed to the letter. We want to make this as close to the exam blueprint as possible. That's the single source of truth we have with the team who want us to pass this. We've got a good community as well, so you can ask questions in the community. If you have questions about the actual specifics of any of the lectures, or any, you want some help with any areas, and you just want someone to give you some guidance, then use the support@cloudacademy.com email. We've got a team on standby ready to help you with that. Yeah, so, you know, I recommend just getting into it. A lot of good content in there. All right, let's have a look at some more quizzes here. Good question. Are all the questions scenario-based in the exam? Right, well, first point as a AWS solution architect is remember two things. One, you want to do the best thing for your customer, and you want to be as ethical as possible. All right? AWS certified architects are ethically sound, and one of the key requirements we have with the exam itself when you sit it is that AWS asks you to enter into an NDA, or a non-disclosure agreement, which is fair enough. So by taking that agreement, you know, you're not really able to discuss any of the questions or the formats of the questions with anyone else. That's one of the things that we abide by as solution architects. So I can't really tell you what I experienced in the exam exactly. Anecdotally, you know, there's a mixture of questions, and the exam guide outlines some of the formats that you can expect. The majority of them are scenario-based because that is a good way of testing out your ability to select options that are likely to meet the requirements. They're the only thing I can say is they're not all easy. So each of those questions is going to, it's going to challenge you, but in a good way. And you know, the more prepared you are, the better you'll feel. And you're going to feel great when you come out of this exam having passed it. It's one of the best things. You're entering an elite group of people who have the professional certification. So don't fuss too much about the actual exam. Just spend as much time as you can preparing yourself for the exam, and what will come will come. The format's not going to be overly different from what you've already done with the associate one. So it'll be the same kind of environment. The difference with the professional one is you do get a pen and paper or a pencil and paper in the exam, and that it's good because you can write down notes. And what I've tried to do with the learning path is just practice how to identify the key parts of questions, how to take out some of the options that may not be a good fit using the great sample questions that have been given to us by AWS. So that kind of process can help, and having a pen and paper is a benefit. Now you are in that room for 3 hours, so I would just take your morning or your afternoon as you normally do. Don't bother wasting time fretting about it. I wouldn't recommend delving into a lot of coffee or energy drinks or anything like that. Just do your normal routine when you go in. My advice would be do it first thing in the morning, because that's when you're usually at your best. Take a jersey or a jacket in case it gets cold in the room. I did one exam and it was freezing. By the end of it, I could hardly move my fingers. So you are able to take toilet breaks depending on who's running the exam for you. Of course, it's down to the testing center, but most of them give you time to take a toilet break if you need it. 3 hours, it's quite a long time. So, but you'll relish it once you get into the swing of things, and the more kind of practice you have with the type of format, which I've tried to instill in this learning path. It's just how to approach this and evaluate quickly, identify which areas we need to work on, and then to evaluate which option could best suit the environment we've been given. And no one knows the exact answers for any of them. I don't know the sample answer questions. All we can do is put forward what we think is best. And I've yet to meet anyone who's got 100% in this exam, and I've met a lot of people who have done it. So it's a tough exam, but it's also, once you pass it, it's a very, very big accolade, and it certainly is a step in the right direction on your career path. Okay, so let's just see if we've got any more questions here. I'm going to have to close this out. The cost of the exam, yeah, it's a universal fee of $300 US. So again, it's a pretty sizable investment on your behalf. You want to make sure that money's not wasted, right? So the more time you spend preparing, the less chance you have of having to go back and sit it again. If you don't pass the first time, don't worry. Okay, a lot of good architects don't, and you get 2 or 3 chances to pass the exam. I'm someone who's quite unique, I suppose, is that I try and do as many exams as possible. It's my job to help put together content that can help you, pass yours. So, I try and sit as many exams as AWS will let me. The number of people I meet who don't pass the first time is pretty high. So don't feel too demoralized if you don't pass the first time. But do write down, when you get home, write down all the things that you felt you didn't know, and start preparing immediately. So you get 14 days before you can go and sit the exam again. So you need to use that time to really take stock of what you didn't answer correctly or what you felt you didn't know well, and just learn more. Now, of course, the ultimate scenario is that you spend 4 to 6 weeks preparing, and you walk into the exam and you pass and you come out and you feel great. That does happen. So, the more preparation you can do, the better. And it depends on where you are on the journey as well. Like if you've just passed the associate, I do think give yourself 4 weeks. If you try and run straight into this one, it will be a bit of a shock. The level of expertise that this exam is looking for is not something that you can't bluff it. All right, that's probably the bottom line here. There isn't any shortcut to passing this exam. It's going to test you in ways that do evaluate whether or not you are able to design. So I would recommend taking a bit more time to do the preparation, and if you use a framework like the Learning Path, that's a really good way of doing it, because you've got someone mentoring you, prompting you and helping you just get to the next stage, because it can be quite overwhelming. There's so much content that you need to be aware of. And if you do try and do this without a framework, then you really need to be on top of your game with your project management, which is easier said than done, right? Especially as everyone's already pretty busy. That's the kind of list of references I have for content. Yeah, a lot of research. Okay, let's have a look here. Got any other questions? If you do have any more questions, further ones, please just ask us at support@cloudacademy.com. That's your best place to get a quick response. The community is great as well. It's not quite as fast, so if you need to get some help straight away, then please just ping us at support@cloudacademy.com, and we'll do our best to get back to you as quickly as we can. And I'm hoping you have time to sit through and pass this exam. Now, the other question is whether should we do DevOps or solution architecture first? Yeah, that's a really good one. So my advice is and if you're starting from scratch, my advice is start with the developer. That's, I think, probably the easiest one out of all of them. It's my opinion only. The solution architect next. And that's going to test you on high availability and business continuity in ways that you'll be surprised at. It also asks you a lot of questions about intricate details of the services, which if you're new to AWS will be like, oh, I don't know these. And that's where the quizzes and things like that can help you. Then I do recommend looking at doing the solution architect professional next. If you're someone who's an architect, now, if you're more of a sysops or you're more admin focused, then I think your track should be towards doing the sysops administrator associate next. And that's a tough exam as well. It's tough in different ways in that it really tests your edge knowledge of the services. And you're really expected to know every granular detail of all of those core components. It's a challenging one. And then look to move to the DevOps next. So that would be my thinking if you are more DevOps inclined or more admin inclined. If you're an architect, then yeah, you should probably look to do the solution architect professional first, and then I think you should aim to do all 5. And if you log into our webinar in 3 or 4 hours, I'm talking to one of our partners who's got all 5 certifications, and you can ask questions about what he went through on how to achieve that if you're interested. Okay, right, I'm going to wrap this up now. So once again, it's support@cloudacademy.com if you have any more further questions. Really good to have you here today. I'm looking forward to seeing you emerge from this learning path with your certification. Good luck, everyone.